The last box was already in my car when I locked the front door of my house for what I thought would be the final time. I remember standing there with my hand on the doorknob, looking at the porch where I had sat every summer for almost 40 years, the flowers my husband planted, the small crack in the wooden step I kept saying I would fix, the place where my children took pictures before they went off to build lives of their own. I told myself I wasn't sad. I told myself I was ready. But the truth was, I had gotten very good at pretending I was ready for things I wasn't. I had sold the house, packed my belongings, made arrangements to move to Charleston and start over near my sister, a fresh start. That was the phrase I kept repeating. Then someone knocked on my door, and when I opened it and saw Daniel Hayes standing there, holding an old wooden box I had never seen before, I knew my plans were about to become much more complicated. Because Daniel wasn't just my neighbor. He was the one person in Blue Ridge, Georgia, who remembered me before I became someone's wife, someone's mother, and eventually someone everyone looked at with sympathy after I lost my husband. Daniel? He looked past me at the empty house and then back at my face. You're really leaving. I crossed my arms. That was the plan. He gave a small smile. You always did make decisions sound easier than they are. I almost laughed, but I stopped myself. That was Daniel. He had a way of saying things nobody else would say. Not cruelly, just honestly. He lifted the wooden box slightly. I found this in the attic while checking the house before the sale. My expression changed. The attic? He nodded. I think you need to see what's inside. I should have told him no. I should have thanked him and continued with my plans. Instead, I stepped aside, and that was the moment my old life walked back through my front door. Before I continue, I want to ask you something. If you enjoy stories about unexpected connections, second chances, and the kind of love that arrives when people least expect it, take a moment to like this video, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, back to Daniel and that box. Inside were old photographs, handwritten letters, and documents I had never seen before. Things connected to my late husband. Things connected to a version of my life I thought I already understood. My husband, Michael, had always been a private man. Loving, dependable, but not someone who shared every thought he had. I spent years caring for him during his illness. By the end, my entire world had become hospitals, medications, appointments, and trying to be strong. After he passed away, everyone told me I was brave, but nobody told me what happened after the bravery ended. Nobody told me what it felt like to wake up one morning and realize there was nobody left who needed you. That was the part nobody prepared me for. The quiet. Daniel sat across from me at my dining table while I looked through the box. You knew about this? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. And that hesitation told me everything. Daniel. He looked down. I knew there was something in the attic. How long? A while. I stared at him. You knew and didn't tell me? His face changed. Not anger, not defensiveness. Regret. I wanted to. Then why didn't you? He looked toward the photographs. Because you had already lost enough. That answer bothered me because part of me understood it, and part of me wanted to be angry. I had spent years believing everyone around me was protecting me. But sometimes protection and control can look very similar. There's something about stories like mine that reminds me how much can still happen when we think that part of life is behind us. If you enjoy mature romance about second chances, unexpected desire, and finding someone when you weren't looking anymore, I've put together more stories like this in my book. Confession of Unexpected Love. You'll find the link in the description below. Now, back to Daniel. Because by then, I was running out of ways to pretend he didn't matter to me. Over the next few days, Daniel helped me figure out what the documents meant. The house sale had to be delayed because one of the papers in the box was connected to an old property issue, a problem that needed to be resolved before I could leave. I hated that. Not because of the paperwork, because it meant I had to stay. And staying meant being around Daniel, the man I had spent years thinking of as simply my late husband's friend, except Daniel wasn't the same man I remembered. Or maybe he was, and I had just never allowed myself to notice. He owned a small furniture restoration business in town. I had always known he worked with old furniture and historic homes, but I had never paid attention to how much patience that required. Daniel could look at something broken and see what it could become. A chair, a table, a house, and apparently a person. One afternoon, while we were sorting through old papers, he found a photograph of me from my 30s. I reached for it quickly. "Don't," he smiled. "Why?" "Because I don't look like that anymore." He studied the picture, then looked at me. "You know that's not what I see when I look at you, right?" I didn't know what to say. Most people my age are treated like they are slowly disappearing. Daniel never made me feel invisible. That was the dangerous part. He remembered things about me that even I had forgotten. The books I loved, the songs I used to play, the dreams I had before life became about responsibilities. One evening, while we were going through the last of the papers, I asked him the question I had been avoiding. "What were you going to tell me years ago?" He became quiet. I knew immediately that I had touched something important. "Daniel." He looked at me. "I wanted to tell you that I cared about you." The room felt smaller. "But Michael was sick," he continued. "And you loved your husband. I wasn't going to become another problem in your life." I looked away. Because the hardest thing about hearing that wasn't that Daniel had feelings. It was realizing he had respected me enough not to take advantage of a difficult moment. A lot of people talk about love. Daniel had shown restraint. And somehow, that meant more. After that, things changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just in small ways. I started looking forward to seeing him. I noticed when his truck pulled into the driveway. I found myself smiling at jokes I would normally pretend were annoying. And I hated admitting that a part of me was beginning to feel alive again. Then my sister called. "You still haven't left?" "No, Evelyn." I knew what she was thinking. She thought I was afraid. Maybe she was right, because leaving had become easier than admitting I wanted something else. I told myself I was only staying because of the house paperwork, because of unfinished business, because of memories. But the truth was much harder. I was staying because Daniel had reminded me that I was still a woman with hopes and feelings, not just someone who had survived loss. Not just someone everyone worried about. Someone who could still choose. That scared me, because choosing something new after 60 is different. When you are young, people expect you to begin again. When you are older, people quietly expect you to accept what is left. But I wasn't ready to accept that my best days were behind me. Neither was Daniel. The day the house issue was finally resolved, Daniel stood in my driveway holding the final paperwork. "That's it," he said. I looked at him. "What do you mean? The house sale can continue." I felt something strange, relief, and sadness, because the reason he had been around was gone. He didn't need to help me anymore. I didn't need his advice. There was no excuse left. No problem bringing us together. Daniel put the papers on the hood of his truck. "I guess this is where I stop interfering with your plans." I smiled. "You always thought you were interfering?" "Sometimes." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I realized something. For months, I had been asking myself whether I could leave. I had never asked whether I wanted to. I took a breath. "Daniel." He looked at me. "I'm not staying because this town needs me." He waited. "I'm not staying because this house has memories." I stepped closer. "I'm staying because I finally want to be here." His expression softened. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what I still had. I didn't move back into that house because I was afraid of change. I stayed because I had finally stopped running from my own life. And Daniel wasn't the reason I found my way back. He was the person who reminded me that I still had a way back. I think that's why I've always believed stories matter. Because even after everything we've lived through, there are still moments that can surprise us. That's the feeling I wanted to capture in my book, Confessions of Unexpected Love. It's a collection of mature romance stories about second chances, unexpected connections, and people discovering that love and companionship can still find them when they least expect it. These are the kinds of stories I would want beside me during a quiet weekend morning, a relaxing evening at home, a long journey where I finally have time to slow down, or those peaceful moments when I simply want to get lost in a story that reminds me life still has beautiful chapters ahead. If you enjoyed my story with Daniel and me, you can find Confessions of Unexpected Love through the link in the description and pinned comment below. And if this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who enjoys heartfelt romance, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story I share with you. Thank you for spending this time with me. And wherever you're watching from tonight, remember, sometimes the chapter you think is ending is the one that leads you somewhere unexpected.